Greetings again. Thank you for taking the time to join us on this webinar to understand and improve the real end user experience for Citrix users. My name is Sri Chaganti. I'm the CTO and founder of AppEnsure. Before I start the presentation and the webinar, just wanted to kind of let everybody know that there is a question or chat box where you can type in your questions, and I will be addressing the questions as time permits towards the end of this presentation and the demo of AppEnsure's product. So let's start our presentation today. About AppEnsure and about this presentation, about this webinar, I just want to kind of cover the basics before we jump into the slides and the demo. AppEnsure is a Silicon Valley-based startup company funded by Citrix. We released our first product in 2014, and today we have worldwide customers and installations. About this webinar, this is going to be highly interactive. There are going to be 5 polls during the course of the webinar, and there will be a survey at the end of the webinar. Each poll is going to take about a minute, and would highly appreciate if you can participate in these polls. And the webinar is going to be focused, most of the time will be focused on the demo of AppEnsure's product, and we will take a use case and go through that use case. So that's about the AppEnsure and about how this webinar is structured. So since I said it is going to be highly interactive, let's start off with our first poll, and I will be launching the poll and will share the results with you. Here basically many of you who are administering Citrix environments constantly hear complaints from the end users, and they mostly fall under the usual categories of people complaining about their logins being slow or their sessions being sluggish or sessions being dropped. So the intent of this poll is to get feedback from your experience so that when we talk about the use cases, I would like to show how some of these problems can be addressed. So at the top of the minute, I'm closing this poll and will be sharing the results. About 50% of you participated and would like to share the results with you, and hopefully you are able to see the results on your screens. And the majority falls in, it takes a long time to be able to get to the application being launched or getting to my VDI, or my session is being sluggish. This is pretty much in line with these kinds of polls that we've been conducting. A lot of people do complaints fall under these categories that you just participated in letting us know. Thank you very much for participating. I'm going to hide the poll results and move on with my presentation. The top 3 reasons for users actually not having a good experience with Citrix deployments is, number 1, there is lack of appropriate tools. I mean, you probably have tools in your environments, but the combination of the tools that can help you quickly identify where to go after and where to look for a problem is one of the reasons why Citrix administrators feel very frustrated in trying to solve problems. And also most of the tools that are out there today are focused on one service or one product. Or in other words, they're basically looking from within the silo or within that particular scope and are trying to establish that everything with that particular silo or particular service is running okay. In other words, it's basically collecting data to substantiate the claim that everything in my little world is working properly. So, but there is no end-to-end visibility or correlation that helps people to find as to what might be going wrong. So it's always like we are going after looking at things and most of the time spending energies in trying to prove it is not a problem rather than trying to go after discovering where exactly the problem is, and that is because there is no end-to-end visibility. Any issues within network or infrastructure can and will often impact the performance of Citrix Form, which basically results in a poor end user's experience. And if it is that simple, why can't we fix it? Could be a natural question you might have. The catching of those issues is not as easy, and correlating it with end user experience is not available today, and that is the reason why it is one of the top reasons why Citrix Form end users of the Citrix published applications or VDIs often face really complaints that you addressed earlier on are really not complaints. They're really experiencing it, and they're expressing it in a way that falls into their common categories. But we have to, as the administrators of Citrix Form, need to correlate those complaints to what is actually happening, which means that we need to understand what is actually happening with the end user's experience and should find ways to improve that. And that is the best way and the only way for us to kind of get rid of those complaints and those issues people are talking about. So moving forward, I want to launch my second poll and would like to, sorry, I was sharing with you, want to understand when you really hear these complaints from people, what is the one that basically frustrates you the most? Really appreciate if you can participate and cast your vote. Again, this webinar is intended to kind of share ideas as well as show some of the things that Apenture is doing in terms of addressing these issues. And if you find them appropriate, we could see how we can help your environments, but it's mostly targeted at sharing knowledge either way, from my side, showing you what we've done, and also understanding the issues that you normally face in the real world. So at the top of the minute, I'm closing. Thanks for those who participated, and I want to share the results. And as you can see, the top frustrating issue is that vagueness of how a problem is defined. And we see it all over the time, over and over again. That is basically, it is slow. What do you mean it is slow? Well, it wasn't as fast as it yesterday, is something that you probably hear from your users. So that vagueness is the starting point, and that vagueness is just an expression of a bad experience end user is having, and it is our responsibility to make sure that we take it from there and find out why is that they're having it. Even better, predict it, see that something else is happening, and stop it from happening. And that's what is required. And of course, no idea until the user complains is another common thing that we have seen. And not being able to find the root cause pushes you into this territory where you have to basically defend that it is not a Citrix problem. So thank you for participating, everybody. Now let me move on with my slide where, as you can and endorsed earlier on, these are the common end user problems that you've seen, and you just basically participated in the poll and reinforced that the list that I'm showing here is pretty much in line with what you are seeing in real life. So, but that's good. We know what the problems are. But again, as you participated and endorsed, most of the time, unless the end user complains, I can't find that there is a problem. And when I try to go in and try to investigate, I can't find the root cause because either the problem is gone or I don't have the tools. So you are always forced to defend your territory or defend the position, saying that it is not the Citrix that is causing the problem. And this is basically what many of you are experiencing in real life. So the of the 5 polls, let's go to the third one. And in this third one, I want to basically understand the while you're addressing these problems that we just talked about, where do you spend your energies? Is it basically trying to prove that it's not a Citrix problem? Cover your rear end, so say it's not, because basically as the messengers, the Citrix administrators are the first ones to get blamed. My session is frozen. That's basically where it starts. My screen is not doing anything. My VDI is unresponsive. So it falls into your lap. And then the mission starts and you're interacting with not just the Citrix, because Citrix is just a delivery mechanism. You have infrastructure behind that is basically supporting these applications that are not just Citrix XenApp servers or DDCs, but a Microsoft Exchange server behind is supporting that. So I'm closing it at the top of the minute and we'll be sharing the results with you. And as you can see, %60 of you said that you're trying to find and understand the problem. That's very important, because 90% of the time is spent on trying to understand what the problem is. If you understand what the problem is, then finding the root cause is going to be easy one. So you basically endorse that, when you research and try to find where the problem is, and again, correlating it with what we found earlier on, by the time you try to find the root cause, the problem is gone. So majority of your efforts when you're trying to go in and find out what is happening, you are not equipped with the appropriate tools. The top 3 reasons why Citrix environments users are unhappy, because you cannot find what is causing the end user's bad experience. And as a result, it's basically like you will be spending the energies trying to resolve it, but the problem is gone and the issue continues. So even after so many years of having Citrix out in the field, even after having all these products and tools that you might be using, and even after having all these vendors that have been in this space calling about fixing your end user problem, still today, majority of you basically underlined earlier on that the problem is not evident to me unless somebody calls and tells me that there is a problem. So how does AppEnsure address this in a proactive manner? Sorry, why is it going backwards? Is saying something wrong here. Sorry, gentlemen and ladies. I just want to get hold of my, okay. How does, we are back on track. How does AppEnsure address proactive monitoring? So when you have Citrix delivered applications or VDIs, and when you start having interactions with the Citrix forms, and then go whether your applications are being published, this is going automatically. How do I stop this one? Let me go back here. I think something is not okay. Okay. So sorry. As the published applications or VDIs being accessed through Citrix, they're dependent on the backend infrastructure where you might have Exchange servers or other SharePoint servers or IaaS servers. And what we basically do is measure the response time for every throughput for each application at all these three layers. Responsiveness and throughput for every VDI, for every application from every user through Citrix, and also response time and throughput for every call that is going out from Citrix that is called to the backwards. So based on this response time is how we actually define how an end user is experiencing an application. Not through interpretation of resource utilizations, not because the CPU is high or memory is high or something. I'm not saying they probably will, and I'm not saying that they don't contribute, but the resource utilizations are only symptoms of something else that might be happening. And we are not calculating or measuring this real end user experience based on any simulations or synthetic transactions. We are taking the real transactions, and for every user that is accessing the application, we are basically measuring what is the responsiveness of that application. Not just the pixels that are being painted on the end user screen. Are these pixels that are being painted, are they carrying the data from the backend to actually all the way through to delivering it to the end user? That is what we calculate in terms of response time, and that is what we're looking for in terms of measuring what the responsiveness of an application to an end user is. So how is that AppEnsure different? So if you look at other monitoring solutions that you might be using or exposed to, AppEnsure is not depending only on the commodity data. What do I mean by commodity data? I mean anything that is available to me through API calls or through Citrix or SNMP or WMI is, in my opinion, a commodity data. And if you interpret those commodity data, then you're going to get commodity results. Any monitoring solution should have a unique metric that it measures that is not available through commodity data. And that particular thing is basically the unique metric that we collect is the responsiveness for every application, end-to-end, hop by hop. So you can identify which hop is basically causing a bad response to the end user and irritating the end user who is calling and telling that it's sluggish, giving you a vague reason. Not only do we measure that, calculate that unique metric, we also correlate and monitor all the dependent processes and child processes that actually make the entire supply chain of that application, whether it be in Citrix silo or whether it be in the backend. And all of this is done automatically. In other words, we discover all dependent services, all applications, all users without any configuration. And not only do we discover the services on which the application delivery is dependent upon, we also monitor the responsiveness of that. So what happens at 8 o'clock in the morning when everybody gets on and every VDI is going to go through a request is going to go through an LDAP authentication, and how responsive is my Active Directory. And the next one is, once auto discover, as I mentioned earlier on, there is no configuration required, and when we install our solution in the entire supply chain, there is no requirement to even start the servers. So having been in your shoes as a consultant, supporting, perfecting the performance of the applications and the environments, some of the things that I've learned are basically implemented in App Ensure, where you want to have the least friction in terms of ability to get value out of the product. See what you haven't seen before that is happening in your environment, and understand how that relates to the end users and being able to improve that. So with that, let me, and also again, one of the things is, as you mentioned earlier on, telling you that you're having a bad day is great, but not telling you why you're having a bad day is totally not tolerable in the world that we live in, and in the IT world that we live in. So alarming and alerting is okay, but if you have to take so much of time to kind of correlate all of that data yourself to find a root cause, then the monitoring solution is not providing any value to you. It's basically sharpening your analytical skills. So App Ensure basically alerts, alarms, and correlates these alerts and tries to find the root cause as to why a certain user is having bad experience. Okay, with that, let me launch my last but one poll, and that is basically trying to understand, how many tools are you today using in your environments to monitor Citrix world? Are you totally dependent upon Insight and Director? Are you totally driven by what Citrix tells you how it is performing? Or are you using other tools that you're basically using to monitor what Citrix says it is doing? And do you monitor at all? Again, I sincerely request everyone to participate, as your input is highly valuable, not only to me, but also as I'm sharing these results with you. You can see how your peers are experiencing the issues with Citrix deployment and why they're here in understanding or trying to understand and improve the true end user experience for Citrix world. Okay, I'm going to close at the top of the minute and share these results with you. Very much in line with other surveys that we've done. About 1/3 out there, in this poll we have 30%, are totally dependent on Insight and Director to know what is happening with their Citrix deployments. And about probably the same set, there could be a overlap here, use other tools besides Insight and Director to kind of make sure that they have a stable environment. The most important thing I want to stress when we go through this is go through the demo. You know, Citrix can provide you with how healthy their environment is with Insight and Director. Your end users are not complaining because for them, Citrix is immaterial. You're delivering an application. You're delivering a VDI. Whether you deliver it using Citrix or whatever mechanism is immaterial to the end user. For end user, the delivery to their satisfaction is the mission. And so the messenger being Citrix, if you're dependent upon the Insight or Director alone to kind of tell you what is happening, then most of the time you're trying to basically prove that Citrix is not causing any issue. But you're not contributing to find out where the problem is happening. And why do we have to be reactive all the time? Why can't we take a look at what is happening and in terms of people complain? 80% of the people don't complain, only 20% of the people complain. 80% of the people just walk away. Just look at the productivity, impact on the productivity. You know, just because somebody hasn't complained that they're having, or they just got used to when they're running a report to show that it takes more than 30 minutes to run a report. Is there a way we can actually identify why and then reduce that? That should be the goal, and that should be the goal for a good performance management tool, not just a monitoring tool. Anyway, thank you again for participating, and moving on with my thing, the solution basics. I have basically ours is an agent-based solution. Agents reside on the servers. You can also put them on the master image, so VDIs will have agents in them. You can also put agents on the endpoints. It's not required, but if you put them on the endpoints, you basically can see the performance of the application, both from a supply side as well as from a demand side. The agents all talk to a master, which has a NoSQL database built into it, and for security reasons, all these communications are one way. In other words, from master, there is no way we can go into any of your servers or endpoints or VDIs where you put an agent in. And the agents are basically universal agents. You just need one agent per operating system. It'll discover whether it's running on a server or a VDI or an endpoint itself. They run as a highly available service. There is no configuration required, no server restarts required, and the agents are self-policing agents. They're constantly looking at what they're consuming in terms of the resources of wherever they've been installed, and always typically take about 1 to 2%, but always cap at 5%. If the agent realizes that it is going to take more than 5% of any of the resource on the server or the VDI or the endpoint that you've installed on, then it goes into a safe mode, throttling the frequency of collecting data and sending data, which otherwise is sent every minute to the master. Agent does not require any disk space. It doesn't store anything. All of the data goes directly to the master. And the master, on the other hand, has a scalable database, as I said, NoSQL, which allows us for vertical and horizontal sharding to support hundreds and thousands of agents. Of course, it's a secured repository of the data, highly available service, and a fault tolerant. And with a hierarchical architecture, a master with a bunch of collectors to whom agents report can support hundreds and thousands of agent installations and thousands of VDIs if you have agents in them. And All of this data, again, is based on real-time traffic and not synthetic or simulations. And we support, if there happens to be any um, incident management platforms that are present through RESTful APIs, SLMP traps, email reports, JSON exports. We support all of the data or the events to be exchanged or to be forwarded to those kind of platforms where incidents are all collected and managed. So how do we play competitively, when you have seen at other tools, because you probably said two or more tools. So if you want to monitor end-to-end, the entire thing, Citrix, including the endpoint and the backend infrastructure, then there are multiple tools that you have to put in to understand how an endpoint and end user is kind of looking at from synthetic transactions point of view, understand how the infrastructure and the network is doing, understand the Citrix itself, and understand the backend infrastructure. You require a multiple of products to meet the requirement of having end-to-end visibility so that you can understand what the end user's experience is. What we have done is, with App Ensure, just putting that App Ensure in Citrix layer only, you can measure the round trips of response times from every user into Citrix and every user that is accessing the backend. If you were to put App Ensure in the backend as well as in the endpoints, then you get a complete end-to-end visibility of every user of every application or VDI every time they access it, including the backend response time if there is something going on with your Microsoft Exchange server. We provide user-centric view, resource-centric view, application-centric view, or VDI-centric view, and provide the diagnostics with root cause as I'm going to demonstrate in my demo shortly. With that, please participate in the last poll of the day, and this is basically trying to understand how satisfied are you with what you have in terms of monitoring your Citrix environments. Again, request everyone to cast your votes based on your experience so that we can share it with our peers to understand what each of us is facing in real world. So as we're approaching the top of the minute, I will close this and poll and share that with you all. The above 50% of people basically are satisfied with what they have but are looking for new solutions. And that's one of the reasons why probably you're here at this webinar. Those are the people who are very satisfied with what they have today, probably understands completely how every end user is experiencing, and they've already improved their user experience, and they have everything in place to do that. Very typically, that is basically environments where you've already have adopted a solution and have reached the peak of what you might want to deliver in terms of applications or VDIs. But surprisingly, we have found those people who are very satisfied, which is almost always very, least minority in the polls, that they've discovered things that they thought were not in their environment when we actually did some POCs with them. And of course, all of us are always looking for improvements on what we have, and typically in our previous surveys, we've seen somewhere between 20 to 25% of the people who are dissatisfied with their solutions. And in this poll, it's a little bit low. But again, at the same time, people that have no solution is not at 17% in our previous polls. It's a little bit less. Anyways, thank you again. And I'll hide with that. My last poll is done. Now I want to talk about the demo I'm going to be giving. Before that, I want to talk to you about how our solution is priced. In Citrix environments, it's basically priced based on the number of concurrent users. It can be as low as $1 per month at higher number of users to $5 a month at lower number of users. As one of our partner tells me, for a cup of coffee, cost of a cup of coffee, I can support my customers per month, basically. And if you're putting them on servers, backend servers, or like Exchange servers or IaaS servers, then at low volumes, it's $50 per server per month, which reduces to $10 again as the volume of servers that you're installing grows. And end devices is $5, same, and can go down to $1 on higher volumes. In today's demo, this is the setup that we have. We have users that are coming, what we call global users that are coming through a WAN, and local users that are basically coming through the Citrix delivery layer. Of course, the WAN users are coming through NetScaler gateway, and they're basically accessing, we're publishing applications, and they're accessing a couple of business critical applications, and I'll go into the details. And of course, here we've kind of considered, given the environment, Exchange Server also as one of the critical application, because what they're doing is a lot of report generation and report distribution. This is the environment based on which I'm going to be providing the demo for you guys. So bear with me. I'm going to get out of my presentation mode and actually go to the demo setup. This is basically the login screen when you go to the master, where all these agents are reporting. They put agents on 8 servers, 2 endpoints, and there are 7 Citrix applications that are being published, 7 shared hosted desktops, and 6 dedicated desktops. And the applications here are pretty much standard applications. In other words, the entire supply chain has been agented. So we've already discovered those applications that are being accessed not only through Citrix, but also probably directly. But since the agents have been placed, those backend applications are also auto-discovered. When I go to Citrix Delivered and look at the point here is basically I'm looking at how do I understand, how can I improve my end user's experience. So as I mentioned, CIASIS application, CIASIS report, it's a healthcare application where patient records are inputted and reports are generated, and that application basically is what I'm delivering. And right there, since these two are business critical applications, I basically see that I have alarms in there, and I can click on that alarm and basically see what is happening. And of course, the first thing that comes to me is that average response time on the backend is deviating. Remember, this application is being published. I'm a Citrix delivered application. The backend response time has deviated. I can click on it and immediately see that it is taking more than 2 seconds, 2 minutes, and I'm sorry, 2 seconds, because this is 2135 milliseconds, and I put in a threshold that it should not exceed 1 second, and the response time. So overall response time is getting affected because the backend response time is deviating. I can go into the details and basically see who is getting that and I can say that this username accessing from this IP address is the one that is experiencing the slowness of the application, which is going to be reflected. So I'm understanding here who is getting affected and why is he getting affected. So once I understand that, I want to go back again and look at, since I have two mission critical applications, is that same thing happening since I see two alarms here which for report generation? Is it also happening there? Yes, it is also happening there. So something is pointing me to the back end. Now, I don't have to chase my tail trying to prove that it is the Citrix problem, because I've already established that I don't have to spend cycles to going through DDCs or Xenap servers to basically show that everything is working okay there, because I've already identified that the slowness that the user or users might be experiencing is because of the backend. And since this is also taking more than a second, I want to go in and look at who might be getting affected with this response time deviation, and I immediately see that this particular user is starting to. He might have called me, might not have called me, because if I put the thresholds at appropriate levels, then I can basically identify the problem even before somebody calls me or sees a degradation. I can understand what is happening in their environment much faster or much earlier than the end user can actually look at. So I want to go to this particular application and then actually look at this application, look at what is happening with this application. Here is the host response time. Xenap server is responding back, as you can see, is taking about roughly about 500 milliseconds. I've taken the 24 hours just to have enough data. And what the backend response time for this application, as you can see, this is a report generation application, and they generate reports, at frequent intervals, but not all the time. And when I'm generating those applications, the calls go up, and the backend is taking, every time I am generating reports, invariably it is taking 1 or 2 times it is going past the 2 millisecond or 2 seconds range that I've configured. And if I wanted to get a desired level of 50%, it is basically the application is not taking as much on the Citrix side. On Xenap server, if the overall Xenap server CPU and memory usage, if you look at it, whenever I am creating this report is when I basically am consuming, and it's not even crossing my Xenap's server, CPU, memory, nothing is going. And I can see that of the 7 users, SL1, my one end user, is getting affected and probably is generating reports, and the backend is taking more than a second to respond back. So if I look at the topology of that particular application, what it basically gives me is that the users are coming in, they're going to a virtual desktop, and on the virtual desktop, they're basically going to this particular CIASIS application. And this CIASIS application, when I click on it, basically gives me the backend. And here it is. I'm coming from Citrix. Here the user becomes Citrix. And he's going to IIS server in the backend. And IIS server is going to MySQL. And the majority of the responsiveness is the bottleneck is coming from this particular leg. My MSSQL server is the one in the backend that is actually delaying the responsiveness for everybody. So I can quickly jump in to this particular IIS server to see what might be happening here. And I can basically go to my servers and click on particular IIS server and look at what might be happening. And as you can see, it is taking CPU utilization is shooting up. And if I go into alarms, I probably will see some resource alarms, critical ones, and there it is. My CPU usage is going beyond 75% and for more than 5 minutes. And not only that, if I look at the other one, which basically said my processor queue lengths are also going beyond 5 minutes, more than 5 for 5 minutes, which basically means things are queuing up for CPU to process. And this queuing up could also be a result of something that might be happening in my SQL server, because I've seen that earlier on that there was a red line there that it is taking longer. And if I really want to see CPU memory are all okay, but there got to be something that is happening. And when I go in there and actually look at what might be happening with the resources there, I basically can say my queue length is going beyond 1 for more than 5 minutes. What it means, it's basically is telling me that there are more jobs waiting to be either written or read from the disk. That is basically making the IIS CPU wait in order to serve a request that is coming from my user SL1. Not only did I understand proactively that a user is having a bad experience, now I've actually drilled down to see which part of my supply chain has to be fine-tuned. If I were to add more resources on the IIS server or ability to divert that application to a faster memory access or disk access, then I can reduce the time it takes for that particular user to render these reports and fall within the service level that I would like to see, which is 1,000 milliseconds or 1 second. So you actually can benchmark, understand what is happening, and then go beyond to fine-tune, and probably SL1 will never complain to me because it's only 2 seconds. But if only I can make that better fine-tuned, then not only am I understanding what the end user is experiencing, whether it is a good experience or bad experience or no experience at all, they're not complaining to you, but I'm understanding the end user experience and I'm trying to see how I can improve it. So this is how App Ensure can actually, so now that just last one thing before we go is that SL1, let's go in and look at what might be causing for us when we go to the users. That particular user, SL1 is the one that we're looking at, and if I go directly to him, yes, he's using those applications, and the SIASys report application, I can click on that application. I can actually see what is happening because I put an agent on the endpoint. It's taking 836 seconds, of which majority of the time is spent on the backend response time. So yes, he's making calls, and this is what is being reported, a complete end-to-end visibility from the endpoint through Citrix into the backend. What might be happening there. And if I look at the topology of this particular user, then what I get is he's coming, well, he's using multiple applications. I said 3 applications, and he is basically looking at the backend applications. He is the one that we are looking at, and SIASys is the application that he's using. I can look at other applications I can select, and as you can see, when I click on it, the response time is peaking at some places where the alarms have been generated. But most importantly, I can also look into the URI that is probably causing the problem. And if I look at that, you can see the peaks. Here is a patient entry URI that is going to the backend that is basically causing the delay. So here, the whole point is I'm understanding what the user is doing, and I can also improve his experience by providing the appropriate reasons, because appropriate resources or appropriate responsiveness from the resources, now that I know what the user is actually using and experiencing when they access an application. This is what AppEnsure has built in terms of providing a complete end-to-end visibility, and in terms of being able to understand how applications are behaving more from a end user's perspective rather than a supplier's perspective. We are all supplying this service as Citrix administrators. So our job is to make sure that our consumers, our customers, the end users are always happy with what is being served. And with that principle is how we have built AppEnsure. So going back again, sorry I took a little bit longer, and just wanted to have some time for questioning as well, but apparently I don't have much time. I want to close it, understanding the your time and giving respect to your time. I just want to make sure that you have our information, and please reach out to us and contact for demo requests, or if you want to have a one-to-one demo, please do sign up. And I can see there is some font differentiation here that we have to fix, but definitely please do come to our site, learn more about us. And if you have any questions, I'm sorry I could not get to the questions to answer them, but I will individually, since the questions are recorded, I will make sure that I respond back to those questions. So in the next 5 minutes that we have, rather than trying to answer one or two questions, please do enter your questions in the chat box. Keep it open so that I can respond back to you individually, one-on-one. And also at the end of this webinar, you will be prompted for a survey. I would really appreciate if you can participate in that survey. So again, thank you everybody for the time that you have spent, and hopefully we will get to see you and meet you online very soon.